rights and to encourage them to fight. Now, growing up at the bar, I was immersed in the bar activities. So at AGMs, we would have our yearly AGM, annual general meeting, and we would hear the best orators on the floor, people like Raja Aziz, Karpal Singh, and they always spoke fearlessly. That's one thing I can tell you about the Malaysian bar. They are fearless. In fact, we have it written in our Legal Profession Act that we must uphold the cause of justice without fear of favor. That's our raison d'etre. So really, as I grew up, I realized that we can't keep quiet about injustice. And I'm sure you've all know the saying by Martin Luther King that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So if you keep quiet because you think, it's someone else's problem, then very soon it could also become your problem, which is why you must always resist injustice, no matter who it is inflicted on. But first, you must arm yourself with knowledge. You must understand what rights you have. How many of you have looked at, never mind read, looked at the Federal Constitution? Anyone? Good. Excellent. That's a really good start, because I can't remember looking at it when I was very young. It's only because I became a lawyer, and then I realized that really that's where it all starts, the Federal Constitution. So we need to understand the basics. Unfortunately, legal jargon is tough to understand for a lot of lay people. So we need to make it our jobs, those who care to and who are interested in it and who want to fight for rights, we make it our job to acquaint ourselves with these fundamental concepts of justice. And let me tell you, our Federal Constitution contains all the fundamental rights, the so-called human rights that some people say is a bad thing. It's all in our Federal Constitution. People just don't want to go there and look at it, like freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion. All of that is mentioned in our Federal Constitution. Now, there is no doubt that, of course, there are limitations, all right? All freedoms, there's no such thing as absolute freedom. There are limitations because you should not impinge on another person's rights when you speak. So that's why you have limitations. You have the law of defamation on freedom of speech. There's some curbing of hate speech. Of course, you also have extreme legislation like the Sedition Act, which goes too far in curbing freedom of speech. And that's why we have been asking, that's a 1948 act, by the way, we're still using it today, all right? It's ridiculous. It's an archaic act. It should have gone a long time ago. But why do people in power like it? They like it because it's easy. It's easy to shut people up when you have oppressive legislation like that. So, how can you as a lawyer, this is what I'm asked, how can you as a lawyer fight against a law? You're supposed to uphold the law. The reason is this: there are such things as oppressive laws, all right? It doesn't mean that just because you have the power to pass a law, you are entitled to pass oppressive laws. Say tomorrow someone passes a law that for a petty theft, they can sentence you to death. Does that sound like a reasonable law to you? No, of course not. So not all laws are good. Not all laws are good. And that's why we fight. When the Bar Council comes out and says, oh, we fight against this law, this is an oppressive law, get rid of SOSMA, get rid of Sedition Act, it means they are not good laws as such. In other words, they do not comply with the rule of law. The rule of law is a concept which means there must be fairness and justice. So when you pass laws, you have to, they have to accord with the rule of law. That's what it means. So when people talk about rule of law, it doesn't mean laws. It doesn't mean written laws only. It also means those written laws must be fairly written. Because otherwise it's easy, you see. I can pass a law tomorrow to say you all cannot attend sessions like this, and then you're stuck. But that's why you can challenge these laws in court. And that happens very, very often. So that's about law. And there's no doubt that what the Constitution promotes is peacefulness, in the sense of you must conduct yourself peacefully. So even if you want to hold a protest, you can. Now we have a Peaceful Assembly Act. You can hold a protest, but you have to do it peacefully. Violence is not acceptable, and I think that must be our rule. Violence is not acceptable. You want to protest, by all means go out and protest, but you do it peacefully. Now, I've been asked also about how difficult it was for me as a woman, coming up the ladder and, you know, leading the bar and so on. Well, let me tell you, today, I'll tell you about it today. It's not easy. It wasn't easy then, it's not easy now, okay? There's very subtle sexism going on all the time. But today, we have more women lawyers than male lawyers. How about that? Which is progress. It still doesn't mean it's easy to get to the top. Right now, we only have our 3rd woman president, okay, after so many years. So, the thing about women is it's difficult to get to the top. You may get into the profession, you may actually practice quite successfully, but getting to the top is tough. But our judiciary recently has seen many women, and the first woman Chief Justice, that is a real achievement for Malaysia. A real achievement for Malaysia. And we should applaud that. We should applaud that. And look at her courage. Look at her courage. Okay, sitting on a panel where in unpopular cases, well, unpopular for some, and having to make the tough decisions. So there is hope. I mean, I still think there is a long way to go for women, but it is something that we must keep striving for. Because I actually think, for example, you look at our politics, not enough women in politics in my view. Absolutely not enough. That's why I like MUDA. Many women leaders within MUDA. There are not enough in cabinet, although it is better than the previous government, I accept. We have 2 women ministers in key ministries, but still not enough. Because for me, we can only be better if we are inclusive. And here I'm not only talking about gender, I'm talking about race, all of it. The more mixed leadership we have, leadership that is inclusive, the stronger Malaysia will be. And I don't know why. We are still a very patriarchal society, okay? Prime Minister must be a man, etc., etc. And we'll be going on like this for a while. But hopefully enough women will break through, but they have to be given a chance. If you look at COVID, 2 countries that stood out in the manner in which they handled it was New Zealand with a woman Prime Minister and Germany. So there are many examples around the world, but they are still too few. So I am all for women empowerment. When someone came to me and said, how do we solve the problems of the country? I said, put more women in politics. Make more women leaders. Have more women leaders. I guarantee you, you will see the difference. It must be evenly balanced. And we must be multiracial. That's our strength. I don't know why we're weakening ourselves by becoming very, very exclusive. Our strength is that's how we sell ourselves to the rest of the world. Malaysia, truly Asia, okay? That's our selling point. We're weakening our selling point by not adhering to that. Now, I think a leadership style is important, of course, but the most important thing about leadership style, I was asked about that, what is my leadership style? Well, you need to ask people who I have led actually for that answer. I'm not sure I should be answering that question, but I think a lot of it boils down to respect. You respect everyone in your organization. You respect whoever you are supposed to lead, and you make it a group decision. Sometimes you have to call the shots, no doubt about it, to move things along. But a good leader listens more than they speak in that sense. So I think that this is some of the valuable advice I can give you when you are speaking to an audience. I've been asked about that too. So I would say to start with, when you're speaking, like I am speaking now, speak to the audience, not above them, not away from them, not as if they don't exist. Speak to them because they're the ones you're trying to convince of your point. Respect your audience. Respect your audience, whether young or old, it doesn't matter. Because they're there to hear you talk to them, not talk down to them. So when you speak, remember your audience is the most important. And of course, Harith will tell you that later. I don't know whether you've been asked the same questions. But if anyone can engage an audience, Harith can. He's the one you need to ask, how you engage an audience. Now, I will move on to the second part of my speech. Yes, sorry, I was asked to share some of my memorable experiences. Now, for me, obviously, it was first being president of the Malaysian Bar. Then Bersih, and let me tell you, it's like chalk and cheese. Leading the bar was one thing. Leading Bersih was completely different experience because there are NGOs there. And street protests, etc., although we did it at the bar as well. We had a walk for justice. We really exercised our fundamental rights, okay? But it is very different because I think with NGOs, they are very well educated in the causes that they support. Everything you want to know about elections, I could find out from the people around me, from the people who were in my committee. And where I brought my contribution was because I knew the law. So I always used the law as far as possible to answer the questions that I need to. When you ground it in law, then it is easy to answer. So when you ground your responses in reason, on facts, you can persuade the public. Do not bluff. It doesn't work. It will not work. And you must always be true to your cause. What is the cause you're fighting for? That's what you need to explain to the public. Simple terms. I think, you know, Bersih had several demands. Everybody was mouthing those demands. And for the first time, I mean, when Maria and Wong Chin Huat came and asked me to lead Bersih, I said, yeah, sure, no problem. Who could possibly object to clean and fair elections? I couldn't have been more wrong. The opposition that came to Bersih was so huge that I was actually shocked. And I learned how to deal with that, with the threats, with the intimidation, and I found that giving reasoned responses was the way to respond. Not by getting excited, not by getting dramatic, just by stating the law. People find it difficult to argue with you when you ground your arguments well. Be true to your cause. Make sure your focus is that and that only. And I've been asked, did you ever feel like withdrawing? Did you get scared? Of course. Of course. That's human. There's nothing wrong with being afraid. But you need to overcome that. Because the cause is more important and the people who depend on you are more important. So you push forward and then you will see that public support will come round. That is what keeps you going. So, I mean, that is the long and short of heading to completely different organizations, and both were very enriching Very enriching experiences. Now, coming to what the youth can do, I'd like to read to you from this collection called Kami Pun Ada Hak Bersekolah, written by Wanita Orang Asli Bersuara. Now, this is what they are doing. They've produced this book and they have written in this, and and if I can read it out to you, what this book is about. Buku cerita suara belia wanita ini bukan sahaja dijalankan untuk memahami isu-isu pendidikan yang mereka hadapi, tetapi juga bertujuan untuk kita semua melihat diri sendiri sebagai sebahagian daripada jalan penyelesaian. You need to be part of the change. Seorang individu mungkin tidak mampu mengubah infrastruktur dan polisi. Tetapi jika bersama-sama kita boleh memulakan perbincangan, mendalami isu, bertukar idea dan dialog kepada suatu tindakan. And they all got together, these women, orang asli women, and wrote this book. Wrote their stories, wrote what they went through, the bullying they faced in school. They all told their stories. They all told their stories. And because there were so many of them, they became a collective, a group who could actually move change. So sometimes when you know people who are oppressed and who need help, you need to tell them to tell their stories. We need to know, because how many of you know about what the refugees are going through? For people like us, we should educate ourselves. We should educate ourselves. But if you know anyone in these oppressive circumstances, get them to tell you their stories. Because nothing is more powerful than hearing it from them, than understanding what it is they go through. I remember once I went to a detention center for illegal immigrants and refugees, etc., etc. And there was a court hearing. They have a small court hearing. And as I was walking to the court, I saw all of the huge crowd of them squatting in the hot sun, and of course, chained or handcuffed, waiting for their case to be called. Now, is it necessary to treat human beings like that? So that they are literally treated like animals. Literally treated. You would treat your dogs better than you would treat them. You wouldn't treat your dogs that way, in other words. So when you see it for yourself, when you understand prison conditions, for example, when you read about deaths in custody and you talk to the families, when you see these things, you will not be able to keep quiet. How many of you drive past a homeless person, right, and do nothing? Don't feel anything, especially during COVID. Well, a lot of us do it. A lot of us are guilty of that. So what I would say to you is, if you see something, try not to turn away. Try not to turn away. At least try and do something, or at least register it as something that we should be fighting for. But as I say, that's why that quotation by Martin Luther King is so, so powerful. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. That's what it means. Because it won't take long before it starts happening to someone you know, and then possibly even you. So, why is it the youth don't know much about the law, unless you're studying law? Well, I think it is the fault of the law as well. Legal jargon can be very confusing, but there are sources that you can go to. And apparently, there is a recent initiative aimed at reaching social media users called AdvoGeeks. Maybe you all can have a look at that. An Instagram page run by 3 legal practitioners with the purpose of simplifying legal jargon. It's called AdvoGeeks, ADVOGEEKS. So it's with things like that, if you want to get together with someone and say, look, make this simpler for us. I mean, law is with you every day. It's there. It's out there. The rules, traffic rules, okay? When you sign a sale and purchase agreement, when you purchase something and it's not what you wanted, do you have rights, all right? When you go to hospital, when you trip somewhere and fall because of someone's error, okay? Do you have a cause of action? So let me tell you, law affects you much more than you think. Much more than you think. What if you're arrested tomorrow? Do you know your rights? And it can happen. You may just be in the wrong place at the wrong time. You can be arrested, held in the lockup, remand 7 days, and you wouldn't know what to do. So always familiarize yourself with your rights, or know who to call. Know who to call. Reach out, get someone to call lawyer, and they can set things in motion. Because we have legal aid, we have all sorts of systems in place to assist people who have legal issues. Now, I also think that perhaps what actions, I was asked, should the youth take to ensure a more just future for Malaysia? Well, to start with, you vote. For goodness sakes. You're all registered, right? I mean, you're automatically registered. What am I saying? We fought for that and got it. You're all automatically registered. Are you going to vote? You must. That is the basic, smallest thing you can do for the country, okay? And it's your duty. It's not just a right. To me, it's a duty. As a citizen, you must vote. Now, obviously, I don't know whether our politics in this country has put you off. How many feel fed up with the politics in this country and don't want to know? You can raise your hands. Yeah, no problem. I feel that way many times, okay? Yeah. So I find a lot of youth are disengaging from politics because it's ridiculous what is going on. It would be really nice, and I'm hoping Muda will do that, really nice to hear people talk about how they can make our lives better. Politicians. We must come to that point where every day, and I think social media also is to blame here, too much information coming at you. Everybody has an opinion about everything, okay? And the language they use can be very disheartening, actually, very harsh. So these are things I think you can do, you must do for me. And obviously, you can take part. Now, what is your biggest worry today? I know I've spoken to the youth, many youth, and I get very similar answer. Climate change, right? Aren't you alarmed at what you're seeing? And you know, this is your future. It may not be mine. I'll be gone, you know, by the time whatever disasters are waiting to happen. So, and I find people are not educated enough about climate change. And that's why youth, I find youth disengaging, because they feel that the administration is not dealing with the issues that are worrying you. Am I right? To some extent. That they are not actually looking at Malaysia in 30 years, 20 years, 30 years. You know what they're doing? They're looking at the next election. That's it. That's as far as their vision goes. Because all they want is to win the next election. And everything they do is about winning the next election. So the youth, you must not disengage. You must participate to change it. Because it is your future that is at stake. And what about activism? You should get involved with organizations, with NGOs, etc., etc. And you know, I'm noticing in many countries around the world, the age of the prime minister or leader, president, whatever, is coming down, reducing. You're getting 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds. We, of course, I think we've crossed all age barriers that are to cross. But, you know, so that's because youth are showing more interest. And let me tell you, you have powerful tools at your disposal that I don't have. I don't have the social media literacy that you have. I don't have that. I only am on Twitter, by the way, it's very old-fashioned, I'm told. Only on Twitter. And I put my comments on Twitter and that's it. But now there's TikTok, there's this, there's hundreds of things. Use it for good. Use it to take Malaysia forward and up. Use it for a good purpose. Use it to educate. Use it to speak to your leaders. Because it works. TikTok works. It worked in the last election, as I understand it. But it works. So use whatever medium you're comfortable with. But don't lose hope the minute you disengage. And there are many people who don't go out and vote. Do you know there were so many who didn't even register to vote? Millions, huh? I'm not talking about one or two. Now they're all registered because of automatic registration. But that doesn't mean they will go out and vote. So, sorry. So the one thing you all can do, the one thing you can do is to please go and educate people, at least at the next election. Make sure that you go and vote and you take 3 or 4 people along with you who have not voted before. That is the best service you can give to Malaysia. Number 1, to vote. Number 2, to encourage others to vote. I think I'll have to stop here. My time is up, as I understand it. And I'm not sure whether there's time for questions. But you know what? The world is at your feet. The world is at your feet. We are here to help you. And that's why I listen, I talk. Wherever I go, I ask the younger members of my, if you're out at dinner or whatever, what is bothering you about what's going on in Malaysia and what's going on in the world? The answers are not very different. Some of it is, some of them feel there's an existential crisis, okay, because of the climate change that we cannot resolve easily. So with that, right, I will end here and I'm very happy to take questions if there is time. I'm not sure if there is. Yes, certainly, I can take 2 questions. Go ahead. Yes.
Hi, I'm Nadia I'm from APU, Asia Pacific University, studying international relations.
Right.
So I have a question regarding your statement when you talk about activism, youth in activism, to be more active, to be more participative, and because we are still, I think we're still binded by the AWKU 1971, I think.
Yeah, ridiculous.
We are still, and recently our Prime Minister also said that it's not appropriate to, remove it, but it's right to move it, or something like that. And what is your opinion on this act? And what?
Well, I'm very disappointed it's still there under this government.
Yeah.
To me, it's shocking, actually, that like Sedition Act like AWKU and all are still there. But it doesn't mean you can't do anything. Because you can act individually as well. Because on social media, all right, you can still communicate your ideas, right? And you can still do what this Orang Asli group are doing. You can do so much. So don't feel constrained by AWKU, because I think when you found your arguments on solid basis, all right, and you're arguing for improving things, I don't think there is anyone who can stop you. AWKU basically is trying to stop you being political, I think. That's the aim. But I think you can still be in NGOs, right? Non-government organizations and so on. You can still do a lot. And actually, I see many youngsters doing that. So I still think you can move forward. But yes, I'm very disappointed, without a doubt, with that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
One more?
Any more?
Here.
Right. Hi. I'm Lucas from UWA, studying in Perth right now, doing politics, philosophy and economics. Just a quick question, because I'm a bit curious. You were talking about how being a multiracial country is our greatest strength and is how we sell ourselves to the international community. But what we are noticing now in the present is that we are noticing a larger racial division and a furthering racial division, especially in the last election we saw, between the two big political coalitions in Malaysia. And now we don't even have a majority government, we have a unity government. And so how do you think we can bring this furthering racial divide away from an us versus them perspective back into a we are one country perspective?
Yeah, you see, I actually think we have a problem. You're right. It is a problem. And our politicians are making it worse. They are never, ever making it better, okay? So I'm worried. Don't get me wrong. I'm worried about what's going on because I think it's a result of irresponsible politicians who feel they get votes because of the way they are pitching their political speeches. It's also down to the education system. It's down to a lot of things. There are big issues, actually, major issues that need to be resolved. But I think you should all, at the youth level, reach out to everyone. You don't discriminate. You don't say they are the other. All right? Try and reach out to all the youth that you know, no matter which school they went to, no matter what they studied. You have to start doing this. We cannot have such a divided country and progress. And I am concerned, as you are, and yes, it has got worse. I completely agree with that. But I'm hoping that the youth will make a difference. I'm hoping. That's why I'm happy to see a party like Muda. Sure, there are a lot of issues I don't agree also. You know, they may say this and, but they really are trying hard, I can tell you. And I like what I'm hearing them say. So we should start speaking that language. And it's going to take time. What's happening now didn't happen overnight. Huh? It's over years and years and years and years of propaganda and, you know, irresponsible speech by our politicians. That's why they say, you know, a politician thinks of the next generation, but a statesman, a politician thinks of the next election, a statesman thinks of the next generation. That's what I'm not seeing in our politics right now. One more?
Yep. So hi, I'm Thiru from APU. So I just have one question on it. That just now you mentioned on the gender equality topic. So I would like to ask, in our organization, should we actually focus more on the capabilities of them on leading on their skills instead of focusing on the mixtures of the organization with gender and racial?
Oh, I think you can do all because at the end of the day, it's like affirmative action, okay? Which is when someone has not had the same opportunities as you and are therefore weaker, any organization should lift them up. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Affirmative action. Gender, women have been pushed down. It's not because they were more stupid than the others, okay? They were kept down. So when you lift them up in an organization and you make it more inclusive, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not like you're just focusing on gender or whatever and that it's not right. It's not like you're giving someone extra. It's they never had the basics before. Only when we do that in a society, when we uplift everyone, are we really going to see progress. Of course, this is a dream, that everybody will be equal, that everybody will get equal opportunity. Equal opportunity. Do you think everyone in this country has got equal opportunity to, for example, education, etc., etc.? No. So in an organization is the best place you can practice inclusivity. You can actually have these principles because you control the NGO or the organization that you're in. You can have these rules that give everyone a chance, and that's all it's about. Okay? So you can push gender equality, please. I think I've come to the end of my time. I'll hand you back to your very excellent MCs. Thank you so much. Thank you all for your patience.